Okay guys, that should have hopefully solved the problem. Sorry for that error. Hope you're all well today. It is the 28th of the 2nd, 2019, 6:06 p.m. London time. That's a better way to start it off. I'm just going to post in the Discord that there's a new link. So yeah, what we're going to go over today is Bitcoin. First and foremost, I'm going to do an update from the monthly down to the hourly because we have a very, I think it's today, right? It's the 28th. Yep. So we have a monthly close coming tonight into the Asian session, which no doubt will cause some volatility. Then I'll get on to TAing a few things that I'm keeping an eye on right now, right? So there's a few coins like Steam, like Quark Chain, NPXS, and a few others of interest that I thought would be nice to run through. Then I'm going to move on to questions that we've been arising, right? So the questions that are questions and answer on the risk management series, charting so you can trade effectively, things that can make it easier to take a trade, and what it costs to actually learn the game we're playing. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, you guys made it. Thank you for coming back. Excellent, excellent, excellent. I hope you're all well today and you're tuning in. I was just saying to the guy that was already here that we're going to go over a Bitcoin update. Then I'm going to show you some alts I'm looking at and why I'm looking at them. And we're also going to go over the question and answer section. So listen, if any of you have actually watched the risk management series and you have burning questions, I'm open to hear them and answer them. Charting so you can trade effectively. So I'm just going to go over why it's useful to chart in a simple way, or why that when you chart, your conclusion should be hidden from your complications. I'm going to tell you things that make it easier to take a trade and what it costs to learn the game effectively, right? So if you're still learning, this really applies for the new people, but if you're still in the process of, you don't know what the fuck's going on, right? I'm going to lay out to you pretty much what's entailed, right? To take you from 0 to 75%, let's say, right? Okay, we've got enough people in, so hi, Augustin. What's up, Turbo? Right, let's get into this. So the first thing you want to do is we want to just start with a blank chart on our monthly. And we want to say something very interesting. Can we see any monthly levels? First thing I'm going to do is just completely rid this chart of these lines so we can do something fresh. What are our two levels? Level number 1, at least according to Binance, yeah? I will back check that on a different chart shortly, but it's a level I can see right now because it's where we sprang from, right? You would have seen me tweet that this was a very important level because it's a level that we moved from 4,444 all the way up to 20,000 in a very short amount of time, right? That was a significant monthly pivot. You can see, I'll answer that after, Mitch, no problem. Thank you for asking the question. So you can see how this acted as a consolidation level and we pumped right off it. Okay, so that's the first thing, right? Serious monthly resistance. Serious monthly resistance. Nice. Nice, 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 nice. Now, what else do we see? What else do you see, guys? Well, we haven't had a white candle on the monthly since our downtrend. How much does it mean? I'm not too sure, but I'm expecting, upon a positive monthly close, I'm actually expecting a movement up. Okay, I don't know if it will happen. I'm not assuming positions yet as if it will happen, but it's in my bias right now. Yeah, I'm not acting upon it. I've been in Tether since I'd say half tether since around the 4100s, but we'll get into that. So the monthly, that's what we're looking at, okay? Resistance and the first monthly green or white candle since 760, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so you wick here, you have a high volume candle, and then you're having two candles which technically are forming higher lows, right? And you have a higher high here. So the monthly is good. Weekly, what's the weekly saying? Previously, in the previous video, I did this. Okay, I denoted right here that we had weekly resistance. Still applies. What else can we see? Here, right here, okay? You see this area of price. I'll go into a different way of deconstructing it in 5 seconds. But this area of price right here that we consolidated at and then we just smashed off, well, it's supply, so of course it's going to act as resistance. Yeah, we moved into that weekly level and we got rejected. Okay, that is a terrible candle on the weekly, but how could we be biased after a candle like that? Because what you guys really want to know is, yeah, it's fair enough talking to hypotheticals, but how can we form a bias? Well, it's rather difficult. When I saw that weekly close, I moved back into evaluating from tether, right? Because that just looks like a liquidity run, right? It looks horrible. But at the same time, you have this line graph, right? And the closes, as far as the closes are concerned, are snaking up still, right? We don't have anything bearish on the close side. And as far as I'm concerned, you know, if you continue to close higher and higher and higher, and the volume is okay, right? And you have confluence with other factors like lower time frames, it can be a bullish signal. So let's move to the daily and let's see what we can assess, right? So yesterday, the daily here was nice. It was nice. Why did we get that candle? I tweeted about this earlier on, but what often happens is this, okay? I'm going to move briefly down to a 4-hour time frame. What you get is, when we get dumps, as soon as you get a slowing of movement, right, you often see people trying to long the first pivot. And I talk about this with the guys a lot, but what often occurs is people that prematurely ejaculate, they just, you know, they don't really win much, right? This is premature ejaculation here, okay? You're trying to knife catch, or you're trying to just long without too much to protect you. Does that make sense, right? You don't have, I mean, if we're talking on the 4-hour, if you go to a lower time frame, there are scalps to be taken here. But the premise is that there are a bunch of noobs that will just long when this candle stops because they're still bullish, right? And most of the time they still get raped. We were actually planning on this happening. I have many conversations planning on this happening, which is one of the reasons why we took Ethereum. But that daily close yesterday, it's bullish. It's bullish still, right? That's a form of swing failure. We move straight into this support zone at 3676, right? Is that a technical level, right, in terms of fibs? Let's check it. So it's fairly technical. We moved into the 618, right? It's support 618. What I'm banking on, just looking at the daily, is of course what everyone else is looking at right now, right? We'll check the order flow shortly, but it's rather simple, rather simple. I'm actually planning on it going further than this, yeah? I'll go down to a lower time frame now. But, you know, of course, we have this impulse here, this consolidation, and we have a movement off, right? You would have witnessed me saying that, look, the moment we close on the daily above 40.52, we're going higher. It's interesting that I was so prophetic with that because it just you know, it came back to bite me, which is probably why you shouldn't make prophetic claims, because usually when you're doing that, you're not operating right, yeah? But it was odd because this was a very, I know we're in a supply zone, bearish break, or whatever you want to call it here. But usually this would lead to a pump. This is why I automatically reverted to bearish after you just smashed down through that. I honestly thought we were going to expand here. Now we're trying to deal with this zone here. It's problematic. It's very problematic. So for the problem, we go down to a lower time frame and we see what we can assess, right? Not much on a 6 or 12, right? Let's go right to the 4 hour and see if we can surmise a bias. So let me turn off this 200. What do we have, right? What do we have to work with? We have a failed swing, so that's a point for bullish. We have higher highs, and if we're following the trend, it's never good to discount a wick. But look, if you're following the trend up like this, you have a series of higher low closes, right? Can you see that? We don't form a lower low close here. Let me turn on the 4 hour line graph. This is marginally lower low, but it can be considered a double bottom, right? For how just poor it is, right? So we haven't had any lower lows in this trend right now. Can you see that? Therefore, on the 4 hour, if we manage to close below this pivot right here at 3806, we can use something, right? We can use something. We can take an extension from this close to this low and back up here. And practically what it's insinuating is that we come down to test this wick zone. Now this is something that's going to fuck a lot of players up that are going long here, right? People longing straight after that wick. Again, I often see this pattern emerge a lot. I'm not saying it will happen, but this is why I'm refraining from taking any trades unless on a lower time frame right now when it comes to corn, because you can get this and then right back up. Okay, wick zones love to be retested. I do need some color, correct. Let me put that a bit darker for you, all right? And I'll make these lines a bit fatter so you can see them. So really, it's not good to use this bias in the lower time frame range, right? At the moment, I'm going to divert to a 12 hour upwards, right? And the 12 hour is not showing too much, but my bias is we flag around in this area for a bit and we come up, okay? Where we come up to will have to be decided upon. If you simply want to assess resistance from our high to our low, right here, you have confluence at this gray area and you have confluence at the 78.6 around 40.87. I honestly can't tell you what's going to happen. What I can tell you is that upon expansion from here, so if we break this swing high and move over, we're starting a new impulse, right? And we're going to come to fulfill this one up here. So really what you want to look to do is a similar plan before, right? If you manage to buy back into Bitcoin, or you're playing with the premise that, right, we're going up, out of corn, right? So the guys that had followed me previously on the previous video, I planned for this entire move, right? This is why you guys need to come into some of these videos or watch them. I had this as a very clear level in our previous vid. I think it was 4150 to start hedging here, right? If you got caught out on that dip, you weren't listening properly, right? Or you hadn't had a plan, because it makes sense to hedge at resistance. So unfortunately, there's nothing too much to do right now. I mean, can we see anything from the order flow according to the moving averages? We're seeing rather the same, right? We've rejected off the 200 and we're basically clustered in the middle of the 50 and the 22. It's just representing what price is representing. Now, this is extremely interesting. Here we almost, okay, very, very close to crossing over after this entire downtrend. That's quite significant on the daily. Okay, I'm not going to tell you about other moving averages, but this is fairly good that this is holding, right? You have a daily close below this zone, you're pretty much fucked, right? You're going to break this swing low, in my opinion. Okay, you're going to break this swing low. If this pivot gives in here, you're gone, right? You're gone. I'm not going to assume that we're going to bounce here, because the further we go down, the more gas you need to pull us back up. Does that make sense? So really, here is the last spot to long if you want a long, right? If you're in US dollars and you want a long, I take a setup as, or like so, right? You put your stop just below this previous impulse, so the stop goes where we form a lower low, and you enter in this range, because this is basically the last entry point. Moving on to the monthly, back to the monthly close, I do think we're going to move up from here, funnily enough, okay? So before I move on to any extended analysis or any extended analysis on alts, I want to know if any of you have questions about Bitcoin, anything you want me to highlight for you, and essentially, possibly something I've missed, right? Anything any of you guys want to add? Right, so it doesn't look like there are too many questions, but to distill the bias, I'm currently bullish on a movement up to here, and we'll see what happens on the monthly close. I will be more interested in playing altcoins, right, put it this way, rather than, panicking, leverage trading Bitcoin, right? The hard caps are going to spring quite hard if we manage to close back over this pivot, right? So there's many altcoins to come up. Now there's a few things I'm going to highlight to you that we're in and watching. First thing is Steam. So that's fine. There wasn't any question, Turbo. It was just if you had a question. Now for Steam, right? I've been using my what do you want to call it, bias on the 12-hour. Due to how I favored this time frame for deconstruction. What we have been waiting for leading up to the mainnet in March, right, next month, is simply a movement above this 200 EMA. The order flow is so choppy around here that I had basically without any help just labeled this as a zone, right? It was right here. I remember this was the significant level, 910 to 920. I denoted if we closed above that, we're going to spring. Now that has happened. What could happen here right now? I think we may come back down to test this 950 region, but it's looking healthy for a move, at least a swing high, and just past it to around 1200, right? So if you're not in Steam and you're looking for a good setup, I think this is one of the top setups for the next few weeks, right? Secondarily, let's look at NPXS BTC. If anyone wants monthly closes engulfing, let's look at that quickly before I continue. Is it engulfing? Let's check. Nope, almost. But it's a very bullish candle, put it that way, right? It's a bullish candle. It actually doesn't mean we can't come back to retest the low down here and then continue up next month, right? Imagine this was an altcoin just stalling for a second, right? It can do anything, but coming off this monthly close with the volume that's traded here, it does feel like a push up is coming from this monthly. Now let's look on to NPXS daily, right? There's been quite a few jokes about this 20 sat monster right now. First thing I'm going to say is, look, this has turned into a crowded trade. All right, a lot of people have got wind about this and they're just buying. This is primarily why a lot of fuckery is going around right now. Yeah, I was seeing people take chunks and chunks and chunks and chunks out of this wall, and they're just getting slapped down and slapped down and slapped down. It does not make sense for this shitcoin to go lower. At the moment with an airdrop impending next month. But what I'm going to say to you is with the predisposed targets, so I'm not sure what happened to my previous chart, but it's on Binance. You want to start to look at banking profits at around 25, right? So our general entry was between 16 and 17, yeah? You want to look at banking profits, decent amount, around 25, all right? I'd take out at least 65%. I'm in NPXS and I'm going to be looking at hedging a lot or taking out a lot at around 25, right? And I'm in until I see anything negative arise. Yeah, Turbo, it's bullish because of just of the candle itself, right? If you go back to that monthly candle, okay, just sidestepping volume. You know, you have a downtrend. You finally have one candle that closes with a bullish nature, right? It starts here, it goes here, it closes clearly above the last candle. It's a wick, right? You can call that, I don't know what you call that in candle terminology, you know, a fat inverted hammer, whatever you want to call it, but clearly the low and the high close are a great difference, fair and in between, right? And because you have this downtrend that precedes it or comes before it, you know, it just makes sense to me to label that as a bullish candle, right? So we've been, and we'll look over Ripple quickly. So we're in NPXS, we're on Ripple, and we're also in Steam. But to look at Ripple, right, this is how we played Ripple so far. We have an average price for around 8249. If we slip below and close below this soft stop area, I'd say on the 4 hour, on the time frame specified, then you know the trades are done for, right? It's not looking entirely strong right now, but the trade was taken on the premise that this would hold up, right? You see this general area, at least for a retest back into our average price area. It's primarily why we put a bid down here and a bid up here, because we didn't know how it would act. Unfortunately, it just seems to be sliding down, but it's not yet invalidated, so we're going to follow that trade through, and if it does, then we'll just move on. Alright, bullish buy, you get just wick on the top is. Yeah, wick on top is a turn off, but with candles, Turbo, it's good to assess, you know, what's the strength of a body and what's the strength of a wick. There, it seems to me as if the body gives it stronger caliber, right? But again, it's also subjective. It's also subjective. So let's get on to the four topics. I'm not going to spend too much time with them, but I'm going to move on to them. So the first thing is, does anyone have any questions on anything, any education or any topics that were posed in the risk management series? I'm going to give you about a 2-minute window to ask questions. If not, then I'm going to move on to the second section. Hi Turbo, so if you have a question about drawdown, please ask it again, because you know there's a lot of information that we go through. I did ask you to bring the question to live stream, but if you could repeat it for everyone, that would be great. In the meantime, I'll see if I can find it. Okay, I asked originally, guys, is drawdown just how much capital is used at once when trading? When trading, so the top one here is using. Okay, thank you for clarifying. Okay, so basically, right, I think you're a little confused in what a drawdown is. What happens, right, is when you are trading, if you in that you showed me an image, I think, and in that image it had a drawdown of, in a period of 60 days, it had a drawdown of 20.79%. Now I don't know the system he's using, but typically what that means is that the longest period he went through, okay, or the max loss he had in a specified period, so I think it might be a single trade, was minus 20.79% of all the trades, or the trade size he was, yeah, I see it, of all the trade size he was using in that 60 days, right? So, for example, if I run 80 trades in a month, and I end up with 150, but, either my losses add up to 25%, or my worst trade is 25%, either of those can be considered a drawdown, right? Usually it will be either losses or max loss. It depends on how it's formulated in their system, right? Drawdown is just when a curve goes up, it comes back down for a little while, right? Depending on how far down that curve comes, that's what a drawdown is. You stated that the top one is using a fifth of what's available to trade, but that's not correct, right? You can have a drawdown and still be using a similar amount, right? If you get drawn down 10%, well, you're going to be using a trade size that's maybe a bit smaller, but it's not arbitrary using 1/5, right? The question is a bit murky, but if you lose a certain amount of money on your portfolio, well, of course you have to trade with less relative to what you've lost, right? So those two should answer your question. Yeah, that's no problem about the engulfing. Yeah, I think many people haven't made their entire way through it yet, although I'm pretty impressed about how far some people have gone through it. However, if we have no other questions, I'll move on to the first topic for today. Okay, alright, let's move on. So, some people often ask me a question, yeah? They say to me, how do I get good at charting, or how do I get good at trading, or what do I need to chart with, how to learn charting? So it happens in this process, right? This is the following process. Process number 1, right? World is foreign. Okay, you go on random YouTube videos, okay, you get taught kind of hard, common, and pretty much new principles, yeah? So you get taught, right, this is how you draw a trend line, this is how you draw resistance, whatever, okay? In this primary perception, you're looking at trend analysis as something to learn with a rule set, right? Like we learn maths, okay, this is the way you create a formula, and this is the exact instruction, right? That's the first thing that happens. Secondarily, then you learn it, and then what happens, right? Full of indicators, right? But not only full of indicators, you move into thinking that the past implies a future one-to-one, meaning that once you actually run a few successful trades using trend analysis, you start to think that it was the thing you were looking for, right? Here are the rules, this is how it works, this is what you do to make money, okay? Number 3, what happens then? Well, your exhilaration fucks you up, right? So within, from point 2 to 3, what actually happens is something interesting. So you'll find in point 1 that traders often are quite profitable when they come to trading, right? It's called winner's luck, but it's more than that, right? They're just looking at things based on their intuition. They're not blinded by oversaturation of information, and they just have a general tendency to find things that make them profitable, right, in the short term, which is why they get very, very caught up in trading quickly, and they move to this next section, right? They get sold on a million things. Not only that, but they think that the past implies the future. Then they get so far into this whole principle of quote-unquote TA that they forget what trading is actually about, right? This is the point I'm trying to make. Now, number 4 is where it comes full circle, right? And number 5 is understanding properly. So, 4, full circle. 5, correct understanding. So eventually what you start to learn in point 4 and 5 is that exhilaration and complication. So in point 4, what you start to learn is that, listen, in this game, whilst you may have thought that your rule sets can predict the future, once you've lost enough, you're ready for point 4, which is to come full circle, which is to think, right, there's something more about this game than I'm not looking at, okay? And it's the fact that markets cannot be predicted, yeah? There's a massive myth that we think we can predict markets. No, incorrect. We make war plans based on what we know, and we execute on probability, right? But it doesn't mean a whale can't swim through the ocean and just execute all the fish, right? So you never really know what's going to happen. And this whole thing of not knowing what is going to happen is absolutely essential for charting, you know? In fact, the synthesis between not knowing what is going to happen and backtesting past data, right? So you can't chart effectively unless you have these two psychological angles, right? You don't actually know what's going to happen, which will allow you to only take things which seem as sure as your mind can allow you to seem. And the second bit is backtesting past data. So you start to really, instead of moving away from, right, when this moving average crosses and this moving average crosses, you start to investigate what's behind the whole thing. And that leads you to point 5, which is correct understanding, right? But not only correct understanding, correct understanding and clean bias. So the whole point of charting, right, is not to, 1, predict the future, 2, to look amazing, and 3, to find the holy grail of existing rule sets, right? There is none. The actual point of charting, so you can trade effectively, is to test past data of your own experiences and what you can see currently. It's to distill everything you can see in front of you, right? Use whatever techniques that you know and have been taught, and distill it into a very clean and easy to use bias, right? There are outliers that put a million things on their charts, but what I'm really trying to say here is, look, it doesn't matter what you have on your chart. What matters is this last part, right? You are using charts to form a bias. Every single line you make is an opinion, okay? When you put 100 people in a room, and each of them has a particular angle about business, and then finally, if you're skilled enough, you all meet at one particular angle. That's what you have to do when charting, right? You use volume, you use trend lines, you use whatever you want. But once you find something to settle on, that's your bias, and you need it, okay? So it's no good just charting messily with any of these diseases inside and without a bias, right? We're doing it to form a bias. If you chart without bias, then you're not really going to do much. See, you can predict, oh, it's going up here. But what do I mean by bias? I mean you're so ready to put your money behind this thing that you actually do, right? That's correct charting. It's not loosely, oh, I think it's going to go here. It's, look, I think it's going to go here because of 1, 2, 3, 4, and I can explain it. I was reading some Mike Bellafiore today, as I usually do, and he was basically saying, look, you need to be able to ring someone up at an investment bank and be able to very quickly explain to them why you're taking this trade. Does that make sense? And that all comes from charting properly, right? Charting, you just forge and synthesize opinions, right? And once it's all forged, you should be able to stand on a stage and say, this is what I think, this is what I'm doing, and this is where I'm going. It's that simple. 1, 2, 3. Entry, exit, stop loss, right? If you haven't, if you're not able to synthesize things, then you just need more screen time. But I wanted to just draw out exactly what charting is and what it's used for. Because people, I just don't think they understand the platitude inside charting, right? So, now that topic has been covered, that also covers things that make it easier to trade, right? So, if you have a chart that's clean, right, and that you have reflected on properly, right, so you've had time to distill it down, a place that you are psychologically kind of convinced that this setup has been well thought through, then it's going to make it easier to trade. The reason I say so is because let's go back to an example like Steam, right? Just forget about where it's going for now. Say we had released a trade, right? Say we said, like, we're going long here, for example, and no one buys, right? And as soon as this thing starts moving, then you guys just FOMO in and start buying, right? That's not trading easily, and that's not what you need to be doing, of course, right? That's trading very difficultly, right? That's a hard way of trading. To make it easier to trade, you need to do an absolute ton of work before you put the trade on. It's that simple. Okay, ideas are not created in a fucking vacuum, right? People seem to think that, oh, I can have an idea, I can have a signal and start to go long, and I understand. You don't understand it, right? You need to really delve into all time frames, understand the fundamentals behind a trade, understand the metrics, the levels, the risk management, the amount that you're putting in. Once you have accurately synthesized everything and you are as clued up as you possibly can be on the warfield that you're operating on, that's what makes it easy to take the trade, right? Most of our inability to take trades that we quote unquote understand, oh, we know it's going here and it's got this catalyst and this target. It's because of the feeling of unknown, right? And then you kick yourself, right? You slap yourself in the head. You might call yourself bad things like, oh man, I knew this setup was going here. I had the entry, the exit, the stop loss, but then why didn't you take it, right? I do it too. It's very normal, very human. We all do this. But there's a reason that there's something that you're missing if you keep doing this over and over again, right? And it's that your preparation, your planning, and your understanding is just lacking. Those are the things that make it easier to take a trade. Apart from all the psychological stuff that we've been over many times, right? The feeling as if, right, you need to be mentally sound, and the market also needs to be sound. And funnily enough, it's having these two meet at the same frequency and at the same time, it can be quite rare, right? That you see a setup that you've done a lot of background work with, the market in general is fine, your mind is fine, right? And it accords with your risk management, yeah? If you really do your work beforehand, taking the trade is the easiest part. What's his name? Mark Forsyth says in one of his interviews, trading is just running a trade, right? You buy, sell, stop loss. Where the complication arises is your inability to crystallize and be confident in what you feel, right? And that ties in lastly and perfectly to our last point, what it costs to learn. So look, you can't get that knowledge or confidence in taking the trades unless you've been through a lot, right? You can't. I can't tell you how much money it's taken me to learn this game, right? It's just very simple. I don't mean to scare any of you off, but only the dedicated ones among you are going to be able to learn more effectively, right? Why? Because you have to lose a lot to trade, right? There are people that ask me how it works in real life. I have a friend, he always asks me, how do you do that then? Can I do it? And the first thing I say to him is, when you're playing football, when you kick a football into a goal, what happens, right? You have a football here, kick it into a goal, right? If you're a noob or you're new to football, how many times are you going to miss that goal? Every time you miss, what happens? You just go and you pick up the ball and you try again. You go and you pick up the ball and try again. You need to shoot how many times? When the goal is right in front of you, bear in mind, right? There's nothing fucking with you. It's just you and the goal. How many times do you need to try to get it in the top right-hand corner? 1,000,000, 1,000, 100,000? How many kicks do you have to do? Are you punished for every kick you make? You are not. But in trading, you need to make an equal amount of kicks, right? But your goal is profit. Okay, and unfortunately, when you run back, you lose money, right? Every kick you make that fails is a loss. It might be a loss for your mind, or it might be a loss for your bank account, which is why you have to have a tolerance for losing, right? You have to understand what the function of losing is, right? Of failure. Because it rings in the brain at times. Oh, losing, I'm a loser, right? Because at school, when we get called that, we start crying when you're kids, and it stays with you till you're an adult. In fact, all losing means is you're on the path to success, right? No one kicks a football perfectly when they start. But unfortunately, in this game, you are whiplashed with a lot of losses. And it's good to keep it into perspective, right? I'm not saying I don't lose. Losing's part of the game, right? Probably lose around 40% of my trades. So even when you do know how to kick the ball, you still have to be very comfortable losing, okay? Like professional footballers also do. Sometimes they get to the World Cup and lose, right? Unfortunately, if I'm going to give you a very sobering reality. If you do not have this detachment, patience, or drive, either you cultivate it, or you have to spend a lot of time becoming emotionally savvy to remedy this. Yeah, probably one of the top points I'm going to say to you, and that's what it actually costs to trade. For you, it might cost 1,000. For someone else, it might cost 100,000. Right? You will find that it doesn't matter how much people have often earned, right? I have friends that had millions in their account, right, and now they only have 10,000. I have friends that had 10,000 in their account, and now they only have 1,000, right? It's funny, the market still manages to rob the same amount of percentage from people, even if they have an extreme amount of money. So what does that mean? Well, your cost doesn't have to be too large, right? Unless you're tracking consistently right now, unless you're working at consistent pace, unless you know how to be emotionally stable, unless everything is set in motion and you're at a point where you can think, yes, I can explain every part of this to other people, then it means that you should still be playing with the sample size, right? The market is always open, remember that. So if you're playing with a sample size, there is going to be many more days where you can take trades once you've mastered, right? Does that make sense? So if you ever get into a rut, actually I'm not going to use that word. If you ever get into a problem with trading, first keep your eye on the goal, literally, and secondly just understand that 1, you have to lose, okay, and 2, you have to lose, right? There's no way around it, unfortunately, right? You go through periods where you have 4 losing trades. Do you have a way to reset back to base? If you had 4 losing back-to-back trades that draw your account down 10-15%, or now are you just completely fucked, right? Is this the kind of thing that makes you FOMO into everything after that? Right? A lot of this skill is psychological, and what it takes, right, or what it costs to learn is in fact time, diligence, and money. It's not just money, right? Time, diligence is also very important, right? You need to keep trying. And in fact, out of the people that put all three of these in, even only the cream of the crop that have high levels of intelligence, IQ, and concentration will make it out of these three, right? Because the amount of things you have to synthesize when you're trading is not for degenerates, right? If it was easy, there would be no money to claim from the market. So it was a sobering video I wanted to make for you today. And really, because I see people missing moves and getting annoyed, and then only getting certain amounts of money or losing, and then they get annoyed. As simplistic as this is to everyone, I wanted to send out a reminder this evening, right? That is part of the game. And don't stress too much about it, right? You're either here to learn and get rich through skill and quickly, or you're here to burn out in a few days and never come back. That's literally it, right? And only 1% are going to be Jesse Livermore. You're not going to be the guy who bought Ripple at $0.0000001 and held it to $5. Just forget about that, right? Forget about that. And the cost is a lot. It's far more than a lot of this. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a lot of time with friends and family and a lot of these things, because to work on the attributes you need, it requires a lot of sharpening, right? I did many years of meditation before I got into trading, and still I was shocked to find that I still wasn't psychologically geared to cope with it, right? Which was music to my ears, because it highlighted holes in my psychology which I wasn't able to find previously. Infinitely rewarding, but costs a lot. Okay, if there are any questions, and if there are any pieces of analysis you would like me to do, I'll get onto that. And if not, then I will conclude the live stream. Interesting. Right, I'm going to release half of my bids here, actually. Doing it on my phone. I'm going to bear with me 2 secs, guys. See, this might not go further than 8250 right now. Okay, I've released 50%. Right, I've done that primarily to hedge against just how long this thing took. You don't have to follow through, right? You do not have to follow through. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to reinitiate those bids at 8159 if it pulls back, right? I'd like to seek a price as close to the average bottom as I can usually. But you need strong hands like this, right? Look, our soft stop was here, and you could have just got shaken out because you were very scared, right? So we'll see what happens. Yeah, Mike, I think you're one of those guys that's very good with your mind, if I'm perfectly honest, right? There are certain individuals that stand out, right? And they seem to be the one that asks questions, It's not an ego thing, right? But when I first started trading, the amount of questions I would ask people who are more advanced than I were or was a lot, man. You know, I used to ask a lot of questions, and I'd find that many of the people around me didn't bother to, and eventually that leads to a massive split, right? It leads to a massive split. Okay, so really, you know, Mike, you're completely correct. That I think more than 50% is success, man. More than 50%. I'd say 75, 80 to 90. You know, north of 80% is tied to mental state. Because listen, if you don't have a mental state, you don't have anything, man. You can't stay in trades. You can't perceive trades. You can't run trades. You can't speak to people. You can't do shit without a brain, right? You know, if you give a man with an amazing brain a chart and an exchange versus someone with a dumb brain, every single instruction he needs to be profitable, but the first man with a good brain you do not give any instructions to, the good brain is going to come out on top all the time. You know? But yeah, ETH Fork, has it killed the rally? Dash BTC, right? Let's go on to Dash, Augustine. Oof. So this is the previous chart I had up, right? I have loads of things loaded up. 12-hour daily. We are at support zone. I mean, look. I can't say anything else rather than the setup that's coming right now, right? Two setups for Dash. We're going to reinstate this so you can see it all properly, right? First, let's turn on the 200. Where's the 200 at? It's right up there. Okay, so the target was pretty much settled. So for Dash, you're getting divergence, but you don't have any higher highs yet established, right? There is one setup to take for Dash right now, and it's literally buying at 0.021249 with a stop below the swing low and a target up there, right? It's not something to overanalyze. What you can see right here is this, okay? You've got support here. You have a pivot, so you have 1, 2, and a third up here. And basically you're bleeding into the one-to-one extension right by support, okay? The reason I highlighted a trade to be taken from here previously was because of this pivot zone up here. Do you see that? Some call it bearish breaker, some call it pivots, okay? Bullish breaker, pivots, whatever you want to call it. It's just support, right? Supply, demand, you can use whatever phrase you want. But we moved away from this area quickly and moved back above it. Now we've moved below it again, but this general area serves as a long zone. There's no need to be so concerned with catching the very bottom or very top. Now the majority of volumes traded down here, but primarily for Dash, you see we broke out. Now bear in mind I'm doing this live for you guys. Why? This is why it's taking slightly longer. Yeah, bear in mind that we had a breakout there, yeah? Okay, bear in mind we broke out. So we formed the first higher high of this downtrend. Makes perfect sense that this is a long zone. There's nothing else to show you, right? Nothing else. This is technically a very good target zone. I mean, if you're able to crack above here in the daily and retest it and hold it, then you're going higher, right? You're going higher. But these are the two targets I had derived, and they're the two targets I stick with. Yeah, let's look at ADH. You're gonna have to bear with me. I'm a little bit tired this evening. Had a lot of biscuits earlier on. Right, let's check this. What do we use trend lines for? Some guy was commenting on my status about trend lines. Look, if it's here, whatever, right? I'm just using it to guide my eyes right now, okay? Where did the lower low, where did the high get traded through? It was right here, yeah? This is our resistance point right now, okay? It's the moment where the floor's opened up, right here. Now let's check our extension from the top. Nice, what do we have down here? Okay, so this is proceeding as before. Let me look at the BTC version first. Right, so simply put, for ADA, right? And I'll refer back to the BitMEX chart shortly, just using this for historical data. At current, we have formed on a macro trend. We're not entirely bullish still, right? We're having lower highs and lower lows. Now we did form a spring here, okay? So we did break out of this series down here, but I'm not too convinced right now. Okay, so we had a falling wedge into a break. Play for ADA to take, right? This is conditional. What you want to do for ADA is you want to wait until Bitcoin shows its strength on the monthly. Now, if Bitcoin starts pumping, this is the play to take, right? In this general area, accumulate with a stop according to your own risk management below this swing low, right? And a take profit at this rejection zone here, this swing high, right? You know, you can even go further and just use targets on the fibs, but they're exactly the same. So you see two targets here for ADA, right? This is the play right now. So you have a falling wedge break, and then you start to form a series of higher lows, higher highs, then you come down, right? And this is compressing right now. This is compressing. We don't see any divergence yet, but at the point that you see, I think we don't have any quite yet. Don't have any quite yet. If we take out this swing low and form divergence and then prop back up, that for me is a long signal up to this red line, considering that the whole market holds up this evening, right? So setup for ADA is looming. It's looming, right? You see the amount of volume that's traded in this candle. Can we assess how much was bought back? A lot. There was a lot. So if this pivot gets raided and comes back up and we start to move, then that's definitely a good setup to take, right? Purely from the amount of volume taken here. It's funny, I did think this was going much further, right? We did take profit. I think it was at 12.30. But that can be applied for the ADAH chart now also. So to condense it, here's what we want. This is an entire up move complete. Let's take the fib from the top to the bottom. We've moved into the 78.6 line. We're not forming any kind of divergence. Want to see volume appear. You want shielding from the market, or you want to move back above this high, right? 1185. So the breakout trade would be a retest of 1185 and smash off, or just a long position from here. Does that make sense? Okay, this is the long position that makes the most sense. Yeah, Ben, I can do that. I can do that. Does it make sense to you for ADH though? I'm charting half dead and also with very little ammunition because I haven't been looking at ADA. But does that make sense to you? It shouldn't be too complicated. I don't know anything about the Ethos Voyager acquisition, but I'll look into it. Yep, Mike, we can check LRC. We can check LRC. All right, Ben, yeah. Thank you. If you want me to clarify anything, please ask. Sometimes it's difficult to know how much sense charts. Yeah, Juki, what's up, man? What's up, Juki? Okay, let's look at LRC, Mike. Okay, right. So you picked some up for a swing, obviously. It's quite a nice chart we have for LRC. It's rather simplistic in nature. Okay, so on the daily time frame, did the weekly. All right. Yeah, LRC doesn't look too bad right here. It doesn't look too bad. Okay, we have support right where we're at. Right where we're at. But we haven't generated a series of higher lows or lower highs right now. Okay, let's turn on our moving averages and we can see what is happening. Okay, so really when it comes to the order flow, right, you want to wait for these 12 hours to cross, okay, or these 4 hours, right? So if we turn off the 22, you want to wait for a golden cross on the 55 or 200, or support on the 12 hour just above basically all of them, right? Can you see that? Easiest to use is 200. So just to check my bias was correct, look, we're not forming any higher highs or higher lows, but there is something occurring here because we're testing the mean right now. Okay? What this moving averages is suggesting to you is if we make a higher high above 1660, then it's most probably going to fly, right? A higher high above 1660, it can be taken to the next resistance, which is about a 12% move. Okay? And wherever the moving averages or the order flow dictates the stop is at that point, you will move it to. At the moment, there's nothing to say that this is bullish, but you can see the way it's curving. Right? Just look at it, you can see it's curling slightly. Now, the real trade for loopering, in my opinion, doesn't come down here, whilst it can be nice if there's FA coming up. It comes once you've cracked here. It's pretty clean zone up from there on, right? You have one trouble area here, but man, if you can crack above here and retest on the daily, there's far to run for loopering, right? You're looking at percentage-wise quite good, and a trade range with very clear metrics too. Right, I'm pretty knackered. That's going to end the live stream today. If anyone has some song requests, I'll put it on. In fact, I'm going to play one of my own today. Alright guys, I'm wrapping this up here. It is 7:12 p.m. 28th of the 2nd, 2019 London time. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you're all well today. Have a lovely evening, have a lovely sleep. And let's see what the monthly close gives us tonight. Alright guys, peace.